What if I told you the United States didn't lose the dollar's throne? What if they handed it away? What if every sanction, every frozen account, every political threat made with the currency was the US loading a gun, pointing it at its own foot, and pulling the trigger, over, and over, and over again? Imagine you run a small business. You've been using the same bank for 50 years. Safe, reliable, trusted. Then one morning, you disagree with the bank manager. Not about your account, about politics, about a parking spot, about something completely unrelated to your money. You wake up the next day, your account is frozen. All of it. Not because you did anything wrong with your money, just because the bank manager didn't like you. Now zoom out. You're not a person. You're China. You're Saudi Arabia. You're Brazil. And the bank is the United States Treasury. This isn't a story about BRICS revenge. This is a story about American suicide by 1,000 cuts. The dollar didn't die. America killed it. Let me show you the murder weapon. I'm going to walk you through 7 wounds, 7 decisions that turned the world's most trusted currency into the world's most dangerous liability. And by the end, you'll understand why the smartest nations on Earth are running for the exits. Quick note, before we dive in. What I'm sharing is analysis and research, not financial advice. Your situation is unique. Always do your own research. Now, let's start with wound number 1. Let's go back to August 15th, 1971. Picture the scene. President Richard Nixon is about to make an announcement that will reshape the global economy for the next century. Standing beside him is his Treasury Secretary, a Texan named John Connally. Now, Connally was a piece of work, former Democrat, turned Republican, shot in the same motorcade as JFK, a man who understood power like few others. And what Nixon announced that night? It was the financial equivalent of tearing up a contract in front of the entire world. For decades, the US dollar was backed by gold. 1 ounce of gold equals $35. It was a promise, a covenant. Every nation that held dollars knew they could redeem them for the shiny yellow metal sitting in Fort Knox. But by 1971, the US had been printing dollars to fund the Vietnam War, the Great Society programs, the whole works. Foreign nations, particularly France under de Gaulle, started showing up with trucks full of dollars, demanding their gold back. The math didn't work anymore. There were more dollars out there than gold to back them. So what did Nixon do? He could have reformed. He could have raised interest rates, cut spending, defended the currency. Instead, he chose the nuclear option. He closed the gold window. Permanently. No more gold for your dollars. Sorry, the promise is off. And here's where John Connally earns his place in history. Shortly after, he met with European finance ministers who were understandably furious. Their reserves had just been devalued overnight. Connally looked them in the eye and said, quote, "The dollar is our currency, but it's your problem. Let that sink in. This wasn't necessity. This was arrogance. This was the United States telling the world, we will print as much as we want, and you will deal with the consequences." The wound? Trust fractured. The first crack in the foundation. Before 1971, the dollar was backed by gold. Limited supply. Trustworthy. After 1971, the dollar was backed by trust me bro. Look at the numbers. In 1971, gold was $35 an ounce. Today, over $2,000 an ounce. That means the dollar has lost approximately 98% of its purchasing power against gold in just 50 years. That's not inflation. That's slow-motion robbery. But Nixon had a problem. If the dollar wasn't backed by gold anymore, why would anyone use it? Why would Saudi Arabia accept green paper instead of hard assets? The answer to that question is wound number 2. The year is 1974. The oil crisis has just shaken the world. Arab nations have used oil as a weapon, and the West is terrified. Enter Henry Kissinger. Kissinger flies to Saudi Arabia with a proposition. A deal so secret, it wouldn't be confirmed for decades. The terms were simple. 1. The United States provides military protection to the Saudi kingdom, weapons, training, security guarantees. 2. In exchange, Saudi Arabia agrees to price all of its oil sales exclusively in US dollars. This was genius. Evil, perhaps, but genius. Think about it. Every country on earth needs oil. Factories need it. Cars need it. Planes need it. Heating systems need it. And if you need oil, you now need dollars to buy it. This created artificial demand for the US currency that had nothing to do with American productivity, innovation, or economic strength. Let me show you what this actually meant for the world. Imagine you're a Thai factory owner in 1975. You need oil to run your machines. But Thailand doesn't produce oil. Saudi Arabia does. And Saudi Arabia only accepts dollars. So, you need to earn dollars first. How? You export cheap goods to America. You work harder, get paid less, just to get the green paper that lets you buy energy. The American factory owner? He just prints the paper. Or borrows it. Or gets it handed to him. This is the game. And America rigged it in 1974. The wound? The US stopped competing fairly. It started living on tribute. Like an empire collecting taxes from provinces. And like every empire before it, America got addicted to this privilege. Which brings us to wound number 3. From the 1980s to 2008, something remarkable happened. The United States borrowed money like there was no tomorrow, and nobody seemed to care. Because the world needed dollars. The petrodollar system meant that even as America ran massive trade deficits, foreign nations had to buy US debt to get the dollars they needed for oil. Look at the numbers. 1980. The national debt was $900 billion. 2000, 5.6 trillion. 2008, 10 trillion. Each presidency, each Congress, kicking the can down the road. Why balance the budget when the world is forced to lend you money at cheap rates? But there were warning signs. In 2009, Zhou Xiaochuan, the governor of the People's Bank of China, published a remarkable paper. He called for a new global reserve currency. One not controlled by any single nation. He was politely telling the world, we see where this is going, and we don't like it. Nobody listened. The wound deepened, the addiction intensified, and withdrawal, it would be fatal, which is why the United States needed to find new ways to keep the dollar dominant. If nations wouldn't use it willingly, they would use it by force. Enter wound number 4. Somewhere along the way, the dollar stopped being just a currency. It became a weapon. 2012. Iran gets cut off from SWIFT, the global banking messaging system. Overnight, they can't buy medicine, can't sell oil, can't participate in the global economy. 2014. Russia sanctions after Crimea. Same playbook. 2018. The CFO of Huawei, Meng Wanzhou, gets arrested in Canada. Her crime? Violating US sanctions on Iran. In transactions that never touched American soil. But here's where it gets truly wild. Secondary sanctions. Imagine you're a German bank. You legally traded with Iran, under German law, under EU law, everything above board in your jurisdiction. But the US says no. You get fined $8.9 billion. By a country you're not even located in. For transactions that didn't touch US territory. Why? Because those transactions happened in dollars. And dollars flow through American correspondent banks. And America claims jurisdiction over anything that touches its financial system. The world started asking a very uncomfortable question. Is the dollar a currency? Or is it a surveillance system with a built-in kill switch? If you're sitting in Beijing, watching this, what conclusion do you draw? You conclude that holding dollars is holding a liability, one that can be weaponized against you at any moment, for any political reason. But it wasn't until 2022 that the world got absolute confirmation. This is wound number 5. And it's the one that changed everything. February 26, 2022. Imagine waking up as Elvira Nabiullina. She's the governor of Russia's central bank. A respected economist. She spent her career building Russia's financial cushion. $640 billion in reserves. Conservative. Diversified. Safe. Or so she thought. She checks her screen that morning, and $300 billion are just gone. Not stolen, not hacked, not lost in a bad trade, simply frozen. by a button pressed in Washington, because of a political decision she didn't make, in a conflict she didn't start. The work of decades evaporated overnight. Now, you might say, well, Russia invaded Ukraine. They deserved it. Put aside your personal feelings for a moment. Look at this through the cold, dead eyes of a central banker in Beijing. You're China. You hold $800 billion in US treasuries. You're watching this happen to Russia. You do the math. That money was never mine. It was always a permission that can be revoked at any time, for any reason, by people who increasingly see me as an enemy. This is the moment the illusion shattered. The United States had just told the world, in the clearest possible terms, your money is only yours if we say so. And the world heard it, loud and clear. Look at what happened next, 2022 and 2023. Central bank gold buying hits levels not seen since the 1960s. China drops $250 billion in US Treasury holdings in 18 months. Over 20 countries apply to join BRICS. India starts moving its physical gold from vaults in London back to vaults in Mumbai. Why do you bring your jewelry home from the safety deposit box? Because you're worried the bank might not let you back in. This wasn't a wound. This was the confession. The United States admitted, through its actions, that the dollar is a weapon first and a currency second. And once you admit that, why would anyone trust you? The lifeboats are now leaving. Which brings us to wound number 6. What you're seeing right now isn't a crisis. It's a migration. BRICS just expanded. Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, UAE, Saudi Arabia. Yes, Saudi Arabia, the same country that made the petrodollar deal in 1974, is now hedging its bets. There's a waiting list of over 30 more countries. They're building alternatives. mBridge, a blockchain-based payment system that bypasses SWIFT entirely. Bilateral currency deals. Trading oil in yuan, repatriating gold, and they're discussing something called the unit, a trade settlement mechanism backed 40% by gold and 60% by local currencies. Why gold? Because gold is the only asset that requires zero trust. If I pay you in rubles, you have to trust Russia. If you pay me in yuan, I have to trust China. But if we settle in something tied to gold, we're trusting physics. We're trusting 5,000 years of history. Look at the math. BRICS Plus now represents 37% of global GDP. More than the G7. They have the majority of the world's population. They have the oil. They have the rare earth minerals. They have the factories. They have the labor force. They have the growing middle class. What exactly does the United States have? A printing press and a military. The printing press is losing credibility every day. And you can't bomb people into using your currency. Ask Saddam. Ask Gaddafi. Actually, you can't. They're dead. Partly because they tried to sell oil in something other than dollars. The wound here isn't a wound anymore. The body is rejecting the foreign object. Which brings us to the final chapter. What does this mean for you? This isn't abstract geopolitics. This is about the price of your groceries, your mortgage rate, your 401k, your children's future. Here's the chain of events. 1. Dollar demand drops as nations trade in alternatives. 2. Dollar value drops. 3. Trillions of dollars currently held overseas start flowing back home. 4. Inflation spikes. Not the 8% we saw in 2022. Something structural, something permanent. 5. To attract buyers for US debt, interest rates have to stay high. Maybe go higher. 6. High interest rates crush housing, crush businesses, crush growth. 7. The exorbitant privilege ends. Americans start paying real prices for imported goods. Let me give you a historical parallel. The British pound lost reserve currency status between 1944 and 1971. It was a slow bleed, not a collapse, but the average British citizen's purchasing power dropped 30% in a decade. And Britain had the Commonwealth, ties to former colonies, a soft landing. America has what? But here's the thing. This isn't about panic. It's about preparation. The nations dumping dollars are giving you the cheat sheet. Watch what they do, not what they say. They're selling paper. They're buying gold. They're selling promises. They're buying energy. They're selling financialization. They're buying real assets. If the biggest nations on earth are diversifying out of dollars, why are you 100% in? I'm not telling you to panic sell everything. I'm telling you to ask the question. What do the smartest central bankers in the world know that you don't? And what are you going to do about it? 7 wounds, 7 decisions. Each one rational in isolation. Each one catastrophic in combination. Nixon needed flexibility. Kissinger needed oil security. Bankers needed profits. Politicians needed power. And along the way, they turned the world's most trusted currency into the world's most dangerous liability. The BRICS nations aren't villains. They're not trying to destroy America. They're just doing what any rational actor would do, securing their lifeboats before the ship goes down. The tragedy is that America built the ship, captained the ship, and then drilled holes in the hull, all while telling the passengers everything was fine. If you want to understand where this is heading, check out my video on the American debt time bomb. I'll link it right here. If this opened your eyes, hit that like button. It helps the algorithm show this to others who need to see it. Subscribe if you want to stay ahead of the shift. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Don't be the one still holding the bag when the music stops. I'll see you in the next one.